everyone, so moving on to video number 2, and I'm talking about compensation in autism spectrum disorders. It also mentions executive functioning. I really wish I'd known about executive functioning when I was younger, because that would have explained a lot. And I know for a fact that, well, I think I struggle pretty badly with it, and I think it's part of the reason why just generally, it's the kind of like, I guess, the sort of like a non-social elements. Obviously, it does impact on social skills as well, but yeah, it definitely holds me back. Apparently, executive functioning is not a core feature of ASD itself. I think they used to think it was, but this article says it isn't. So that means that autistics vary in their executive functioning, which I guess makes sense, as indeed, you know, if you take anything, any kind of like symptom of autism, obviously you're going to find varying degrees of manifestation, because autism is a spectrum after all. It suggests though that better executive functioning could support compensation as well, and it says, you know, because it can enable the person to be more flexible, and it's connected to processing speed, and it suggests that it might actually be a better predictor of good outcome than IQ, which is actually quite interesting, because that might why I explained that despite the fact I've got this good verbal IQ, I still really struggle with life. Like I said, my mum had to do all of my organising for me when I was at school. I was really messy. You know, I needed a lot of support with things beyond the normal age. Like, you know, it's like I was compared to my like age and my my sort of good verbal, I was a lot behind. I was behind, you know, other kids, and you know, in the sense that my parents had to do a lot. Basically, had to, I guess, kind of like self-help skills and stuff like that. You know, like my parents had to do a lot of stuff. You know, keeping me organised, reminding me to do things, you know, for a lot longer, again, say what you'd expect given my good verbal intelligence. And we didn't know about executive functioning when I was growing up. That's quite a new concept, which I'm still trying to find out about, because I don't know too much about it, but it's an interesting concept. So let me know what you think about that as well. Again, asks the question, what is good outcome anyway? For example, non-autistic ideals for what's best for the autistic person, because obviously even say an autistic person who's good at deep compensating might say have a good job and be able to kind of have all the trappings of kind of, I don't know, normalcy in inverted commas, but might actually not be happy and might have, say, a lot of mental health problems. So is it good for them, or is it good for the non-autistic society? And also, of course, there's a lot of mental health problems connected with compensation. So, shallow compensation, to go back to shallow compensation, with shallow compensation, there's a failure to generalise, and the person has had to explicitly sort of teach or has had to explicitly learn social rules, but without really understanding them. So as I say, that's what applies to me. I've had to learn social rules, you know, a lot through sort of like copying and reading and things like that, but I don't really understand them. I can't really connect with people. And it also says that for shallow compensation, the social cognitive difficulties will still show up on like implicit tasks. So the ASD brain problems like still persist, as it were. The person hasn't developed alternative pathways. Whereas in deep compensation, it suggested that the brain has actually been altered in some way. So the brain will still look atypical, but in a deep compensator, alternative parts of the brain would have been recruited to actually help them crack the socials, to actually really help them develop social understanding, but via an alternative route and a lot more effort. And yeah, so it says for deep compensation, the compensation has extended to the cognitive level, but slower response times. There will be atypical neural routes to support good theory of mind performance. And also in deeper compensation, the person might be so successful that they might not necessarily have impaired mental health, and many decompensators don't even require a diagnosis, because they basically aren't disabled. They're not struggling. It's perfectly possible that a decompensator, though all of this might potentially fall apart, say under extreme stress, we don't know, and then maybe they would go and seek a diagnosis, but often decompensators, are far less likely to need that diagnosis. Again, it goes on to talk about late diagnosis. So, first of all, there's the possibility that the person might have had a relatively non-autistic presentation until adulthood, where social demands exceeded compensatory ability. That isn't the case for me. If anything, I was more obviously autistic as a child. I say obviously in terms of behavioural presentation than I am now, because as a child I hadn't yet developed the ability to sort of successfully mask at all. So I was very inappropriate, even at school. And obviously I couldn't mask to the extent that my problems weren't noticed, because right from nursery school and primary school, all the teachers were very much aware that I was a different child. They just didn't know at the time why. So they were very much aware of it, and they were often calling my parents in to discuss this. So it's very obvious, that I wasn't a typical conventional child. So in my case, I definitely did not appear, I was different and I appeared different, and it was a very obvious difference right from the start. That couldn't be ignored, really. My parents were aware I was different. Anyone who got to know me over time would notice it, It might not have been stereotypical, and obviously awareness of autism wasn't as great then as it is now, but it was, but people were definitely aware that I wasn't conventional. It was just I didn't have the language, they didn't know about autism, clearly. But some autistics might appear non-autistic, however, until adulthood. The second possibility is that the person did exhibit autistic behaviours early in life, but it was not sufficiently impairing for a diagnosis. For example, the environment lessens the impact of difficulties. For example, there might have been lower social demands. I can make sense of that a bit more. I would say my problems were pretty impairing, however, and they certainly have left a lifelong mark on me, particularly in terms of my low self-esteem and, those kind of feelings of stupidity and incompetence that stemming from essentially always being put in the bottom sets, feeling like out of your depth, not being able to keep up with work, despite the fact that actually, I do have intelligence, as my high verbal IQ shows, and I did eventually manage to get that university degree. I guess kind of against the odds, really. That feeling of stupidity never leaves you. I would say that when I was growing up, my problems were impairing, but and obviously that the school were aware of that, and that's why I got assessed. When I was 9, 10, nothing really happened out of that, really. I think, my mum, like I was saying, did do all that background work for me, all that organisation and everything. So I was in a very supported environment. It was highly scaffolded, and I think that meant it was easier for me as well to slip through the net because, I had that support structure in place, and I was a happy child. It would look like, I was being scaffolded, I was being supported. I think if my mum hadn't been doing all of that background work, then obviously it would have been even more impairing than it was. So environment can lessen the impact of those difficulties, and then obviously once you enter adulthood and you're not as supported, and say you can't enter the workplace, for example, or it becomes clear you have real functional impairments that can no longer be scaffolded adequately enough, then that might be when a person seeks diagnosis. Indeed, that's what happened to me when I was 19, and my parents said, right, we really now need to do something about this. This can't go on, because it got to a point where obviously, they were aware that I was about to become an adult and that they couldn't do as much for me as they had before, and I needed to get support. I'm going to stop now. As I say, I want to come back to this again and talk about this again next week. Carrying on talk about this, because I took so many notes on this, so it is going to take it might take another couple of videos to carry on reading through my notes and commenting on them. Do let me know what you think about this. what I've talked about today in the comments box below. Can any of you relate to the things I talked about? Can you relate to the scaffolding? Can you relate to social demands exceeding compensatory abilities and how that might result in a person then getting diagnosed? Do let me know, because I'll be really very interested. And as I say, I'll carry on talking about this next week, and also in future videos, just to let you know what's coming up in the pipeline. I also am going to be reviewing Asperger's children, about the birth of autism in Nazi Vienna, because I read a very interesting book called Asperger's Children, and I really want to review that, so that's going to be coming up as well, a few book reviews, because I'll be reading a few autism autobiographies as well, to get on my list of things to talk about. Coming up, do please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Do please like this video if you like the content you want to see similar videos, and do please hit that notification bell to be notified of future videos. So I hope you have a good week, and thank you for watching.